Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back at it again with another Wuthering Waves banner, pull value, all of that stuff. Another video, and this time it's going to be for the version 3.5 update, because as you're all aware, there are some new characters. There are going to be some very insane reruns, and well, after you've seen the lineup and of course the value discussion we're going to have today, a lot of money coming in for Kuro Games in this update, because this update probably has some of the most must-pulley looking units we've ever seen in the history of the game, and you can't really go wrong. No matter where you go, you're winning somewhere with any of the units that you end up pulling. So without further ado, let's go ahead, let's get this all started, and well, start off the conversation with YangYang Xuangling. As we're all aware, this character is one of the most DPS coded characters we've ever seen. We've seen it from her animations. We've also seen it from her reveal in the actual live stream itself. She essentially has like dual stances and focuses, well, based off the news that we're going to be seeing, she focuses on heavy attacks and Havoc Bane. Because if you go ahead and you go over to this menu, the events tab over here, and you actually skip over her and you just take a look at the new enemies. Take a look at this guy. Sonata effect, the feathers, focus on the feathers. But then look at the echo skill. Summon blades of thousands of memories. When inflicting Havoc Bane, consume a blade to deal Havoc damage. So you gotta summon these blades, and then when you inflict Havoc Bane, you consume one and then, well, I guess throw it at the enemy or something like that. And then when you read the set, Song of Feather Trace, which is where the Sonata's from, you see this. Upon inflicting Havoc Bane, gain crit rate and heavy attack damage bonus increase. And this is also going to tell us a little bit about SuiSui as well, so don't worry about that second effect for now, just focus on this one. Havoc Bane Applier, DPS, that deals heavy attack damage. Kind of obvious, right? Especially when this is the Feather set, and this is also SuiSui set, and you get what's going on over here, right? So the reality is that this character is going to be a brand new archetype, a basically new type of negative status damage dealer. And when it comes to negative statuses, she's probably going to be one of the most unique implementations of them all, because Havoc Bane is a weird negative status. It doesn't actually deal any damage. If you know how Havoc Bane works, all it does is it reduces the defense of the enemies. It doesn't actually do damage over time or a burst of damage like all of the other ones. And so this likely means that she's going to like use Havoc Bane, but not maybe feel as negative statusy as some of the other units that have been released before. Not with all those extra damage ticks, not with like the more like constant DPS, but she's likely going to have hard hitting numbers. Very, millions, if not hundreds of thousands, right? And deal damage that way versus the more numerous ticks and lower, screenshots that you get playing other negative status teams. This also might mean a Frolova could be really good on her, because guess what Frolova's outro skill does? It buffs Havoc and heavy attack damage. And that's kind of like the thing. A lot of interesting sort of like combinations that can be made from this. But there's another realization that we need to have. Do you already have a Havoc character? Maybe. If you have Frolova, do you need another Havoc DPS? Maybe. Who knows, right? You also got Havoc Rover as well, but they're not really aging as well as you maybe would have liked. Because that's kind of like the situation, guys. Havoc is one of the most underrepresented attributes, at least in terms of like DPS offerings. You got Camellia, you got Frolova, and then you're gonna have YangYang. And guess what? Not a lot of people are really playing Camellia anymore. And so maybe it's just Frolova. Yeah, I mean, YangYang seems like a solid pick now, right? YangYang seems like a pretty solid pick now, doesn't she? Because, well, maybe you don't have Frolova. Or maybe you don't want to play Frolova all of the time. I think it's good timing for her. It's been like a year, basically a year since the last time we had one of these. And chances are, maybe you don't even have Frolova and you're just looking for a strong DPS. My advice is that for new players, I think YangYang Xuangling is probably going to feel like a must pull. Simply from the perspective of, I assume she's going to be reliable. I don't think that they're going to make a character like her Giga teammate reliant or like Giga predatory. I think this patch is meant to be actually good for new players, because clearly there's a big draw with a new region and a new story and all of that for new players to come. And it's one of the biggest updates that we've ever had in the history of the game. So I think that she's going to be pretty good. As she's the game icon, I don't think they're going to fuck her up. And I think she's going to be high value, because of that. Now, we got the next unit. Yeah, this character is still good. This character is definitely not as must-pulley as they were a couple of updates ago, simply due to the fact that all of their teams, except for one of them, has essentially replaced her. Lynae is currently only best in slot on one team now, and that one team is with Ameath alongside Mornier. When you combine these two together, you essentially get like the wheelchair team, where you can slot in basically any DPS in the third slot and do very, very, very well. But that means that your Ameath's not going to have the team then. And that, of course, means that you're using up a slot for your Mornier, who can be used in Mono Fusion or with Luuk. But that's pretty much it. She can be used with Mono Fusion or Luuk. So she kind of like now isn't as valuable as she was before, because Luuk now uses Denya, Ameath can now use Denya too, and Hiyuki now uses Lucilla. So it's really just only one team where she really excels in. However, there is one other team that's coming out in the future for her. That, not confirmed yet, but it looks kind of obvious. Lynae has a Toon Strain mode that hasn't seen use since Denya got released. That's because Luuk is a basic attack damage dealer, and Lynae buffs only Liberation and all damage by 15%. Right? But this is the thing. Lynae's got a new character coming up that's also going to inflict Toon Strain shifting, but then, well, they're going to deal arrow damage instead. And what a lot of people are saying is that, oh, we all know like an arrow-looking character that actually showed up in the trailer, right? We all remember that arrow-looking character that showed up in the trailer. Where's she at, though? Where's she at, though? Oh, here she is. She plucking some strings and shit. Yeah. Yeah. Because Toon Strain sword user, we have a Toon Strain standard Broadblade that deals liberation damage, which is the type that Lynae buffs on her outro. So I think a lot of people are seeing the same sort of like, are seeing the thing that I'm saying, right? I think King Zhao is going to be a liberation scaling Broadblade user that is a Toon Strain DPS. And Lynae will be, in Strain mode, her best in slot support for King Zhao, right? And I'm just taking this, the set that we just saw, and then, of course, the fact that she looks like she's using a Broadblade in-game, or at least in the cinematic trailer to talk about this. Yeah, Lynae's value is looking like it could hold a bit of a buff in the future. Because right now, like I said before, not as valuable as she was prior, because she's gotten so many alternatives, but she might have a new best in slot very, very, very soon. However, there's another very convincing case for pulling Lynae, depending on the state of your account. What if you don't have her? What if you don't have her? What if you don't have anybody else, right? And if that's the case where you're in, where you don't have Lucilla, you don't have the Denya, you don't, blah, 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 right? Lynae can do the job of those characters, not at their level. She's not going to be as good as Lucilla or Hiyuki. She's not going to be as good for Luuk as a Denya, but she'll be like 90% of the way there, 85% of the way there for both of them. And that makes a character like this very valuable if you have very low units on your account. And if you're a new player, like I said before, she's a very good pick too. And for new players, I would even recommend, based off some of the newer characters that you're going to, or based on some of the future characters you're going to be seeing, it could be a strat to skip Xuangling too and go for this unit instead. You'll see what I'm talking about very soon though. Now the third unit up is going to be Luuk Herssen. And this is where stuff starts getting really complicated. Because Luuk is, without a doubt, potentially the best free-to-play DPS in the game. King Zhao might be better than him when she comes out, but for now, he's going to take the top spot. Because Luuk Herssen has something very, very, very simple going for him. One of the best standard weapons ever. Because what this guy is that he is a Toon Strain basic attack damage dealer that really, well, scales with Toon Strain, but then he also has this. Pulsation Bracer. One of the strongest standard weapons in the game, where it gives at S0R1 12% attack and then up to 24% basic attack damage bonus while having, at max level, ignore the weapon effect at R5. These base stats, 587 attack and 204.3% crit rate. That's really good for a free-to-play weapon that you can get with standard pulls. And it's enough for him to clear all endgame content. If he's in his homeless one cost free-to-play team where it's just him, the standard weapon, in like a Farina and a Sanhua, typically he can clear floors 1 and 2 of the hazard zone in TOA. And if you want him to clear floor 4, you kind of need like his whole team, but you can still do it on the standard weapon. Basically, this standard weapon makes it so that if you don't pull for his weapon, Luuk will be able to clear the hardest content in the game. Works in End State Matrix, works in a bunch of different places, blah, 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 all of that. So yeah, that's sort of like the situation over here when it comes to Luuk Herssen. He's always going to be really, really, really good. And the main thing is that he's one of the biggest, he's probably the best boss fighter in the game. There are a lot of enemies that are aerial, mobile, stuff like that, where you can't hit them. Luuk is without a doubt a bosser that when you know how to play him, he's probably at the same level as a Carlotta. If you know how to play Luuk, you will land all of your attacks. You'll miss maybe one of them when they're flying in the air, but so can Carlotta. She can miss some of her shots too if you like fire them while they're like fucking in the skybox, right? Same with Luuk. But this dude, pretty much, you could take him against Mia, you can take him against fucking the astronaut, you can take him against anybody, bro. If they're flying, you can take him against the false sovereign. Bro can take all of them because he's so mobile. And that is also one of the biggest parts of his kit is the consistency. He's got an insane amount of consistency, especially considering he's a melee character. Really, really, really solid. And of course, like I mentioned before, he's very, very, very good with Denya. Denya's obviously his best in slot, and if you have Denya, Luuk is just a very good pickup regardless. But this is another thing. Remember what I talked about when it came to Lynae? How she can work at like 85, 90% efficiency for pretty much all the characters that Denya could support and all the characters that, Lucilla could support? Yeah, Luuk is one of those characters that Denya supports. So you can just straight up decide to use Luuk with Denya, Luuk with Lynae, if you're a new player, and that's going to be really, really, really good too. But you can also just use Sana with him as well. It's hard to decide who to pick, because it's really viable to just skip YangYang Xuangling and focus on building out this stuff instead. And I don't really think you can go necessarily wrong with doing that. This would not be an incorrect play for somebody to make, knowing what we know right now. Now, that's only going to be phase 1. Hold some of the thoughts on phase 1 for now while we go over some of the weapons. Because, of course, it's probably valid for us to have that discussion first. YangYang's weapon. We don't know what it does yet. It maybe has the potential to be insanely, stupidly strong, but it's probably going to have some Havoc Bane scaling specificness that is going to make you want it a lot more over EOG. But you still need to see how YangYang does over Emerald of Genesis, because guys, it's been pretty consistent the whole time, right? Hiyuki, sword using DPS. Ameath, sword using DPS. They both really want their SIG, but they both operate just fine without it. Will YangYang Xuangling also really want her signature, but also operate just fine on EOG? Potentially. Most likely. As long as you have her team, right? And that's the case with Ameath. As long as you have her team, you don't need EOG. And for Hiyuki, as long as you have your team, you definitely don't need EOG. Or you definitely don't need her SIG. You can just use EOG. And for Xuangling, I don't really see it being the opposite case. We'll just have to see, but do keep that in mind. It's been very consistent so far. Lynae's weapon. So unnecessary, it's unreal. This is basically going to be the speed run of me saying skip Lynae's weapon and just use Static Mist instead. This thing, yes, improves her personal damage, and it does give a slightly better buff than Static Mist, but Static Mist is free. And it does like 85% of the job that her SIG does, and it's still way above average in terms of just like value add to your account. So just go for this, and if you really want her SIG, consider it, but it's so unnecessary, it's unreal. And then Static Mist ER makes her so much easier to build, it's crazy. Bro, I like prefer using this because she has so much more ER, and you only need one ER roll at R3. It's heavenly. So skip this. I'm not joking. Skip it. And then Luuk Herssen's weapon. Based off the fact that I spent so much time talking about how good, right, the standard weapon was, you could probably just skip this, because you can clear all the content in the game easily without it. However, if you have his weapon, you get this tactic. I think with his weapon, you don't theoretically need to get a Denya or a Lynae to clear some of the harder content. Basically, getting Luke's weapon and having good investment on him lets you skip out on getting one of his premium teammates to clear stuff like floor 4. And if that's the case and you want to do that, you can go for it. However, in a similar vein, Luuk's teammates are very good. Luuk's teammates, his premium ones, they include Mornier or Denya or Lynae potentially. And those are all great characters that have other teams too. So in the same vein, skipping out on one of Luuk's premium teammates to get his weapon can be a net loss to your account if you're skipping out on a Denya, if you want to play like Fusion Burst, or if you're skipping out on Mornier at all because Mornier has so many teams. So do think about it like that. If you're getting this instead of one of his teammates, maybe reconsider that and get one of his teammates instead, because they'll typically do a lot more for you. But that's going to be the situation here. Skip this, maybe skip this, and who knows if she's even going to need this. And then when it comes to the characters, she's probably going to be strong, so you can pull her. She's already extremely strong, and she's really recommended, but she's not as valuable as she was before. But if you don't have anybody else on your account, you're a new player, she's basically a must pull. And this guy is one of the best free-to-play DPSs in the game. That also works with her. It's hard to pull, guys. It's hard to pull. But don't worry. I've got the answers for you. But to get the answers for who you're going to pull in Phase 1, you actually got to know who you're going to pull in Phase 2. Are you ready for this one? Let's get it started over here, because the first unit up is going to be SuiSui. And so when it comes to SuiSui, this is the situation. I think that we might have a lore situation over here. And by lore situation, this is what I mean. Every time two characters have shared a Sonata set, it's only been 3 times. They've been on the same team. Does that make sense? Augusta, share the same Sonata set. They're on the same fucking team. Rebecca and Lucy share the same Sonata set. They're on the same fucking team. Hiyuki and Lucilla, they share the same Sonata set. They're on the same fucking team. I would just assume, based off the fact that YangYang is a negative status DPS and SuiSui is a negative status healer, that they're on the same team. Because that's what SuiSui is. She's a negative status support that applies her own Glacial Chase so that she works with Hiyuki, and then outside of that, gives attack to the entire team. So Cardathea's fucked again. Yeah, Cardathea, you still can only work with Chisa. Looks like this is not the Shorekeeper. I guess she is the Shorekeeper, and then Kart's just fucked because she's an HP scaler. Yeah, no. Because she gives attack, no, SuiSui is the Shorekeeper, because Kart doesn't work with Shorekeeper. You know what I mean? That's what's going on over here. Negative status support that is clearly going to be working with YangYang in the same team, but then also applying Glacial Chase so she works with Hiyuki, and then she also buffs attack. You can guess what's going on. If you're going to pull YangYang Xuangling, you're probably going to want to pull SuiSui. I have a feeling they're going to work really, really well together, but SuiSui has the nice alternative of probably working pretty good in some other teams as well. How many other teams? I don't know. I can already write off one of them, though. Cardathea is gone. So your other options are going to be potentially Ameaths. Potentially Ameath in Fusion Burst with Denya, and potentially also, right, with Zani and Phoebe. Because I think she's guaranteed to work with Hiyuki, especially by applying Glacial Chafe. But do we know how well she's going to be working with other negative status users? I don't know. I'm already skeptical because I saw the attack increase. If this said all attribute damage increase, I'd be having a different conversation. If this said all attribute damage increase, then I'd say, oh, we do have the most generalist negative status character out because Kart's going to work with her, Cardathea, who's rerunning right now. I guess you now know how to pull on this banner. And the answer is don't. Yeah, so Kart's not going to work with her. Is Zani going to? Is Ameath going to? Or is SuiSui going to be just a YangYang and Hiyuki support? I don't know yet. And if she's just a Hiyuki and a YangYang support, her value is questionable. Because her value depends on, then, if you have Chisa and how many negative status teams you have. Because that's how it's going to work. The issue is currently for negative status teams, you only have one real support, Chisa, and she also happens to be a unit that has 3 separate teams she can work with right now. And she's the best in slot at all 3 of them. And so if you have all 3 of the teams, which you likely do, because Hiyuki is very popular, Ameath's very popular, and Cardathea is very popular, the 3 main push characters, right, the Sentinel Resonators or the Anniversary unit are all negative status characters. And you likely have all 3 of them, and so Chisa's already busy. So that's SuiSui's role. She's basically guaranteed to work here, and she's going to be guaranteed to work with YangYang Xuangling, which would be the 4th negative status team that Chisa might work on. Because she also applies Havoc Bane 2 and increases the max stack limit so YangYang Xuangling can apply more. Do you see what's going on? We're going to have 4 negative status teams and 1 support, and she's the next support that's getting added. And if you own all 4 of those teams, she's a must pull. Because you can't play the fucking teams unless you get her. That's just it. That's where the conversation ends. If you have all the teams, you need to get her too to be able to play them. Otherwise, you will have 4 teams, and they can all only be used one time and then in an endgame mode. Except TOA. Right, in TOA, you'll be able to play 2 teams. But in end state, you'll have 4 teams that can only be used, I guess, 2 times now, right? Because Chisa's getting a bit of a buff there. But then in Weewa, bro, Chisa can only be used once in the end game stage in Weewa. You got 2 sides you need to play Weewa in, but she can only be on one of them, bro. So you're just never going to have a negative... You're only going to have 1 negative status team in Weewa, which is going to be annoying. Oh, there's Electro Flare Rover, too, so maybe she'll support that one. I don't know. There's, like, basically so much more negative status shit coming out in the next update. You already got the 2 new characters there. And the more negative status you've invested in, the more valuable she is. But on the same note, if you're going to get her, then maybe you want to get her, too. Because they're going to work together. Do you see what's going on? Do you see how it's become a lot more complicated, the pulling value? Because if you're getting her and him, maybe you want to skip her. Maybe you want to skip her because she's not going to do very much for your Luuk, right? She's not going to do very much for your Lynae because they're not negative status characters. Now, we got Ameath. And this is where stuff really gets complicated over here. Because Ameath is like the 3rd piece of the puzzle for these 2 characters. If you pulled Lynae, now Ameath is the must pull. You essentially have 2 like duo packs in this update. You go for YangYang and then SuiSui, or you go for Lynae and then Ameath. Either one is going to set you up for a good amount of success. But if you go Lynae Ameath, you can also branch off and get Luuk too. And now you have 3 characters that are all centered around Toon, can interchangeably work together. And Mornier, and then pulling Mornier after getting Luuk, Lynae, and Ameath is like, your account's now like insane, right? Because now you have Mornier, Luuk, whatever, and then Mornier, Ameath, Lynae, and now you just gotta pull Denya, and you got 2 of the best teams in the game. You then got 2 of the best teams in the game off of that. While over here, you kind of only got like 1, and then you got to get Hiyuki and Lucilla and stuff, right? It's not as easy to like plan. Plus, you can interchangeably use Lynae to support both Luuk and Ameath for different resistances in the TOA too. For a new player, I'd maybe recommend this. Get these 2, and then get Ameath versus maybe this dynamic that we're seeing over here. But we'll just have to see. Because I think it's a lot easier to build off of a core featuring her and Luuk, but that's just my personal opinion. But obviously, Ameath's one of the best characters in the game that has some of the highest single target DPS when she's in Toon Rupture mode, but she also has a separate mode that's very usable too. Essentially, this character has 2 separate team comps that feature 2 entirely different sub DPSs and supports, and the end result is that both are viable in both game modes. You effectively only need 1 Ameath team, and I would just suggest for most players, if you don't have her yet, just build one of them. And if I were to suggest only 1 team to build, I'm going to be honest, I think her Toon Rupture one is a bit better than her Fusion Burst one. From the perspective of her Toon Rupture one, it was like her first one. It also, I think Mornier is just a bit more consistent of a character to go for than like a Chisa. And second, Lynae has so many more use cases outside of Ameath's team than a Denya does, because Denya's only other use case outside of an Ameath team is with Luuk. So Rupture in general just seems like a more budget-friendly option just from like how well you can sort of spread your resources, and that's the one I would suggest you go for. And Kuro seems to know that too, because Rupture is the one that they made available in this update. So for most people, if you don't have them yet, Lynae Ameath is going to be one of the best deals you can make in this patch. And there's really not too much of a reason to stray beyond this if you don't have the characters yet, because for a new unit or a new player, you know you have consistent, insane results over here. Very, very, very good results over here in both game modes. While over here, you're not necessarily sure yet. and you know this unit can support a bunch more people, and you know that this unit has a second team in the future if you do decide you want to expand further. That's one of the nice things about Ameath, is that you can build her Rupture team where she uses Lynae and she uses Mornier. But then in the future, if you do want to like try out some new stuff, great, then throw in the Chisa, then throw in the Denya, but there's no rush to do it now. And that's one of the cool things about this character, is that you have that. Second, if you got Lupa, Ameath is also very good too, because Lupa just ends up, via mono fusion and the insane buffs that she provides, guys, Lupa's just always going to be pretty good, especially with Ameath. And you can also just run Lupa, Ameath, and then somebody else in the third slot, and it's also going to be a good team as well. So if Lupa's here, then Ameath is also just going to be a solid pick as well. But yeah, I mean that's the main thing. What I'll say about this character though is that she's also one of the most teammate reliant characters in the game. If you don't have her teammates, her performance can suffer a lot. Like in Ameath, without a Lynae, without a Mornier, without a Lupa, kind of doesn't really do a whole lot of much. So you really want to ensure that you have somebody that supports her, buffs her damage to some degree, before making a lot of use out of her. And there's physically no way for that to happen on this banner unless you skip Lynae. So if you don't have this character, make sure you get Lynae before pulling her. Because one situation you don't want to end up is having like an Ameath that's got nobody to work with. Because that's just not a good time at all. That's what's going on here, ladies and gentlemen, on the character side. And I know we talked a lot of like strategy and stuff, but there are some very, very, very clear paths for people to make. YangYang and SuiSui, or Lynae and Ameath. One or the other. And honestly, it probably just depends on which designs you like better. For some of the capital G Gooners out there, just know that I guess there's going to be a Lynae skin as well, where she's out here looking like a straight up California girl. Bro, is that a juice? I don't even know what this is. I don't even know what this is supposed to be. Anyways, she got the skin there too. So like, if that's what tips the edge for you, then we know you're probably edging while that edge was tipped. That's gonna be the characters. Now let's move on to the weapons. I don't know what this fucking thing does. It's a bird though, so it looks cool. I imagine it's gonna be just like a Shorekeeper signature, where it's like, after you apply Glacial Chafe, give 14% attack to the entire team. And then we got Ameath's signature. So this one over here is very, very, very simple. If you have a decision for Ameath, pull her teammates or pull her weapon, you pull her teammates first. Ameath with her weapon, but a bad teammate, is worse than Ameath with EOG and good teammates. Ameath's damage literally comes from her teammates. However, there's a big buff over here if you decide to get Ameath's weapon, and that's because variation is on banner. And some of you might be thinking, holy moly, wait, does that mean SuiSui's probably going to use variation? And the answer is yes, I think SuiSui is going to use variation because she's a rectifier user. And variation is broken, gives you concerto faster, all of that shit. Yeah, very, very, very cash money. And my take is, yo, don't... this is probably going to be the biggest skip ever, because Shorekeeper and typically every support signature like a Mornier, they're giga skip weapons. Guys, there's a good amount of potential that you'll just be able to get Ameath's weapon and then maybe a copy of variation at the same time. Actually, I've established it. New players, this is what you do. You skip YangYang, Xuangling, you say, fuck that shit, I'm getting Lynae. Then you pick up Ameath, and then you get Ameath's weapon, and then you get variation. That is the true 99 IQ big play strategy for a new player to absolutely cook this banner and be on the positive receiving end of all its benefits. Yeah, that is the giga pull value route. Actually high IQ gameplay. Because then you'll get a tier 0 team where all you need is Mornier to finish it off, right? You get variation for your Shorekeeper or your Verena. Fuck it, share it. Fuck it, get 2 copies. Get 1 for each of the hoes. Sorry, Verena's not a hoe. Shorekeeper is one, though. And then you're going to proceed to, with any leftover pulls, start looking at King Zhao, because Lynae's probably going to be her best in slot 2. And she's probably coming out in the next patch. Do you see what's going on over here? This would probably be the approach. You just skip YangYang, Xuangling, you skip SuiSui, and you just go for Ameath, Lynae, and then you know Lynae's likely going to be the best in slot for this character in a future patch, And then, yeah, I guess you maybe, you say fuck you to Jing Ran because he's fusion and you already have Ameath. But you're probably not going to have an Arrow DPS. And guess who you can use in the third slot on this team? Bro, go Arrow Rover, Lynae, and fucking Ching Zhao, bro. Bro, that's just going to be, bro, that's going to be a broken free-to-play team. Broken free-to-play team right there. Green Rover. That you're going to have to play Green Rover, though. Into Lynae with this, bro. You got the arrow damage amp into the fucking, into all the big boosts over there. Good God, bro. She should be pretty crazy. So, yeah, that's going to be my personal take. But once again, guys, it all truly depends on who you actually have on your account, right? Because you want to pull units that are going to have an impact immediately. And some of these units might be really high value. SuiSui might be one of the best fucking units ever, but if you have no negative status characters, she isn't going to do shit for you. YangYang might be one of the best DPS characters ever, but if she needs SuiSui, she's not going to do shit for you. Ameath is the best DPS of the game, but if you don't have her teammates, she's not doing anything for you. So if you're not going to pull her teammates, there's no point in pulling her. So you just got to know what you're ready for, what you have available, and of course, what your budget is going to be. And spend accordingly. Because this patch, there's a lot of stuff to pull on. And the last thing that we're going to cover is, of course, the last thing that you can pull on is this. Don't pull any of these fucking units. This is just for collector purposes. If you pull any of these characters, you're essentially consigning yourself to getting a unit that's not as strong as others. But if you had a pick of who's the most viable out of here, because you only need like 40 pulls to get to pity, it's probably Chang Li or Jian. Yeah, I'm not even joking. Like, the most viable out of the characters here, it's Chang Li and Jian. Chang Li in Mono Fusion with Brant and Lupa, and Jian in Mono Arrow with Chakona and Yuno. Those are the two best units. You can also pull Jeju for Carlotta, but that's basically it. Everyone else, you should be skipping. Skip Zhang Li, skip Jinxie, skip Yinlin. And then probably skip Chang Li and Jian and Jeju too. But, like, again, those are, if I had to make a choice. Like, simply an educated decision. And then for the weapons, just skip all of them except for String Master. Or, if you have Augusta and Yuno, you can pull Zhang Liao or Jian Signature. But only if you actually have a Zhang Liao or a Jian that can use the signature too. Like, if you can get if your Yuno and Augusta don't have the weapon yet, you have Zhang Liao and Jian and you don't have their weapons too, then yeah, pick it up. It's going to be fine. But like, that's such a weird situation. I don't think anyone's in it. But yeah, pick up String Master if you can though. Or if you don't have it yet. Or if you need a second rectifier. But that's pretty much the only other thing people should be going for. As you can see, this update is bonkers. This update is crazy. This update is super rich in terms of what's going to be available. And there's a reason why I said Kuro Games is going to be making a lot of money. Because theoretically, for a new player, it wouldn't even be a bad idea for a new player to pull on every single banner in this patch. Except for the weapons, right? They skip some of the weapon banners. But like, if they pulled this, and this, I wouldn't even say that's a bad idea. Like that actually seems like it would be a great idea to me. Like I actually think that's a high IQ move because they're all good characters. They're all extreme, I assume SuiSui and YangYang are going to be good. But the reruns are all very good characters and they all work very well together. You pull Denya and Mortier and then you have bro, if you had all 3 of these units or all 5 of these units, you pull Denya, Mortier, you have like 3 teams. You have 3 tier 0 teams. And that's kind of it. You could, if they had Denya and Mortier rerunning next patch, in just two versions, you would have 3 tier 0 teams if you pulled everybody. That's how good these reruns are. A lot of potential for people to go broke, but also a lot of potential for you to catch up on some of the top meta picks from Lahai Roy, right as we go into Bangzhou. And hopefully this video over here with the breakdowns, descriptions, TCOS, all of that, it's educated you on what you want to do. So yeah, let me know what you all thought about this one. Peace out.